Hand is raised, tell me your secret. For how many of you did that meeting go well? How many of you led that meeting that went well? No. Okay, all right, it's right. How many of you have been in an unproductive meeting since the last time we were together? Hands are higher this time. How many of you led that meeting? Let's face it, City Arc has a pretty meeting-heavy culture. You know the little analytics report that Outlook will send you on a weekly basis? I started looking at it, and it tells you how many hours you spend in meetings and with Zoom. And I realized through that I have 12 to 14 hours of standing meetings every week that are just on my calendar every single week. And it really got me thinking about the time and energy that I put into facilitating those spaces and how that's so much of my work week, and how the amount of preparation that I do for those spaces is really important to getting stuff done. So today we're going to get into talking about meetings. And we really think that you can plan meetings where you get the maximum amount of productivity in the minimum amount of time with maximum group member satisfaction. Does that sound good? Awesome. So, going back to our 4-day overview, our first day together we really explored a lot of the theory around adaptive schools. Our second day, we talked about developing identity and capacity. So that was really giving you all some more skills. We talked about the 2 ways of talking as an example of one of those things that we can all do as a group member in different spaces. Today with day 3, we're talking about this idea of transforming meetings. So we believe that there are some best practices for meetings that when we do them, we'll be more effective together as a group. And finally, tomorrow, we're going to enter day 4 with sustaining the community. So we're going to talk about how do we take all this work that we've done together and move it forward into our day-to-day lives. It's been a while since we were together, so we want you to revisit the goal of adaptive schools. Please read it and then turn to a partner and talk. Now that it's been a couple months since our first 2 days together, what's resonating about this goal for you now?
Thank you. Don't worry, you're gonna have plenty of time to talk to the folks. We're gonna actually jump into our first activity, our inclusion activity. We're gonna do something called a people search. So we're starting with this inclusion activity to help bring some energy into the room, to help us continue to build this community as a group, folks we haven't seen in a little while, and to sort of get that knowledge that we were building on in May, call that up so we can start building on that today and tomorrow. So what you're gonna do, in just a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand with your learning guide and pen. And you're going to use page 121 of your learning guide. And I'm going to ask you to stand with a pen. You're going to circulate the room, interviewing different folks based on the prompts on page 121. So the idea is to connect with some folks and see how folks are processing information, and the pace is up to you. We're going to have a few minutes to do this. So depending on your conversations or what you're looking to get out of this, you might talk to 6 people. During that time, you might get into a deep conversation. You might talk to 1 or 2 people. That is up to you. But the idea is to interview folks based on those prompts. When you interview someone and you have that conversation, note their name so that you know who you talked to about that. And when the conversation is over, encourage you to move on. What questions might there be about the process for this inclusion activity? I'll put them up here so you can see them as well. All right, sounds like we're ready. Go ahead.
And when you're done, turn to a neighbor and talk about which one of these outcomes has the most significance for you today. Before we move forward, today. So, refresh and reconnect, you have a chance to do. We're going to talk about successful meetings. We're going to do this through activating some of the knowledge that we all currently have around meeting structures. We're going to talk about energy sources. So you might have remembered back in day 2, we talked about principles of complex systems and that things and energy matter. And our energy sources help to give us some insight into why groups behave the way that they do. We'll then talk about the 3 structures for successful meetings in the afternoon. And as always, we'll end with some organizing and integrating and putting all of this work into practice today. We're also going to have a break in the morning. We'll have an hour for lunch, and then we will have another break in the afternoon as well. Now I'd like you to set a goal around the norm of collaboration for today's work. You'll see that they're posted in the back, and I'm also going to put them up on the screen. So thinking about our 7 norms of collaborative work that we talked about in days 1 and 2, what might be a goal you have for today? And I would also like to bring us back to the working agreements that we created together as a group in our 2nd day. And thinking about the working agreements, which might you want to pay attention to for yourself today? So on your own, you're going to write down a goal around the 7 norms, and you're going to think about the working agreements we created as a group on our 2nd day. Think about which of these might you want to pay attention to today.
Set us up for today and tomorrow to have different partners to practice with whenever we need a partner. The way that we're going to do that is like this. In a moment, I'm going to ask you again to stand with your learning guide and pen, and this time you're going to be on page 14, where there should be a picture of a clock with some slots next to 12, 6, 9, and 3, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to get up with your learning guide and pen, you're going to let Destiny take over and mark eyes with someone and talk about your clock partners, right? So the idea is throughout this, all you have to do is identify who your clock partner is going to be. So if Destiny takes over, Sophie and I lock eyes. Do you have a 12 o'clock partner? Would you like to be 12 o'clock partner? Wonderful. I'm going to write Sophia. She's going to write Liz. And then when it comes to be 12 o'clock, we're going to know exactly how to find one another. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify someone for each of those time slots. And when you're done with that, we'll know because you're going to be sitting back at your table. What questions might you have about getting a clock partner to work today? Work? Go. If for some reason, when it comes time for that partner, you didn't get one, or your partner is not here at that time, we will take care of you. So don't worry, I don't want this to be a source of stress for people the rest of the time. We're in good hands. And we're going to start right away with our partner. So, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to pack your things. You're going to get with your partner, and you're going to find a new place to sit. So what you'll do is you'll find your 12 o'clock partner that you just identified. Take your belongings. Now, this is going to be your seat for the next little while, so take what you need. Feel free to leave what you need. But find your 12 o'clock partner, find a seat at the table, and share with them your normal collaboration goal for today, as well as what working agreements you're paying attention to today.
Great. So at the beginning of the day, we're going to start talking about meetings. And as I mentioned in the beginning, we all experience a pretty meeting-heavy culture, so we're going to utilize some of that experience and expertise as we head into our next section together. So at your table group, what you're going to do first is you're going to think about what are some unproductive behaviors that you've seen or experienced in meetings. And you're going to ask someone at your table to write for your group. And you're going to brainstorm for 1 minute, recording your ideas. So in your table group, take 1 minute and record what are some unproductive meeting behaviors that you have experienced in meetings. Thank you. Feel free to shout them out. Not listening. Thank you. Not listening. Doing unrelated work or reading. Nice.
Goals not stated.
Why are we here? What else?
Like processing out loud but taking up a lot of space to do it and thereby not allowing other people time, or taking up the time that others.
Yeah, I heard this table talking about something similar as well. Yes.
Related, like power dynamics and agenda hijacking.
We recognize this may be hard, but we're gonna actually ask that you set those aside, both physically and in your mind for the next little bit. Because we're gonna talk about principles and practices of effective meetings. I noticed that they're principles and not rules. We think that principles are a little bit more flexible than rules are, and they might morph and change over time. And it requires us to have a suspension of the things that we know that are unproductive behaviors, and also view those as an opportunity to learn and to know what we don't want in a space. And we're gonna use that to turn around and start thinking about what are some of the things that we do value in a meeting space. And we're gonna do that through an activity called Sort Parts. So this activity is meant to harness the knowledge that is in the room and start thinking about, what do we know are principles of effective meetings? So, individually, you are going to think about concrete examples of productive tools and strategies that you have seen used in a meeting. You are gonna write one of those strategies or tools per Post-it note. You have Post-it notes on your table, so make sure everybody gets some of them. Make sure you write legibly, because other folks will look at you reading these when you're done. So at the end, you should have a stack of Post-it notes, one productive tool or strategy per Post-it note, and then I'll give you the next set of directions. Go ahead and start that now. Have your individual stack of Post-it notes. We're gonna do a table group activity. So in your table groups, you are now going to share the examples that you have written on your Post-it notes, and you're going to begin to categorize those Post-it notes as a table. One example of a time we did this is with our thoughts and wants after day one. So how you decide to categorize the Post-it is entirely up to your group. You're going to start finding some categories amongst your table with your Post-it notes. Please label your categories as you make them together. And then when you're done, I'm going to ask that you find a spot on the wall to stick your group's poster. So thinking about space and kind of spreading out around the room, find a spot on the wall when we're done for your group's poster. You'll notice you have a rolled up paper on your table, and that's to be used for your categorization. What questions might you have about what we're doing next? Let's go ahead and begin. That interest you on other groups' posters. And you're doing this because at the end, I'm going to ask that you go back to your docent and didn't get a chance to actually tour the museum and share some of the things that you found. So as a table group, you'll tour the museum and you'll take notes of some of the strategies and tools that you want to share back with your docent at the end. What questions do you have about what we're doing next?
The officers and decorations, we learned so much about the culture, so excited to share that experience with you all. We're going to get started today. We're going to spend the day talking about meetings. Who has been in a meeting since we last were together about a month ago? Okay, and for how many of you did that meeting go well?
So I'm gonna ask that you turn to page 123 in your learning guide. And when I say go, I'm gonna do the following. So we're gonna do an inclusion activity like we do often when we start these meetings. And it's just a way of us to get up, get moving, get some energy in the room. It's a way to continue building a community. So we know that you all work closely together, a lot of you do, but there's also other folks in the room. So anytime we enter a new space with new people, we have to think about how we're attending to this community. So give you all some time to build a community with one another. And to access prior knowledge. So as Liz said, the last time we were together was in September. There was a lot of content in days 1 and 2 of Adaptive Schools, and it's been about a month and a half. So we want you all to be accessing all the things that we've learned in days 1 and 2, get a chance to share that with one another. And the how we're gonna do that is that in a moment, you're gonna stand with your learning guide and a pen. You're gonna move to a person at another table. You're gonna read the prompt that is on your page. You're gonna record the person's name that you're talking to and interview them. And then you're gonna go and move on and interview the next person. Now, the goal is not to necessarily fill your page with interviews of talking to folks. Your goal is really, as you're in dialogue with one another, pay attention to how you're pausing, paraphrasing, and practicing those skills when you're talking with one another, as you're accessing that prior knowledge that we've learned before. What questions might you have about our people search this morning? All right, go ahead and go.
About your intentions for today, I'm also going to call your attention over here so that we can review our agenda for today. We're going to start by doing some refresh and reconnect, calling up the learning that we did last time and connecting that to what we've been doing in the time since we've been together, and then connecting with the folks in the room to think about what goes on next. We're going to talk about energy sources within a group and how to understand those and how to use those to intervene when there might be challenges. We're going to talk about our norm of posing questions and have an opportunity to really practice that norm as a skill. We'll spend a lot of time talking about the structures themselves for successful meetings. How do we get to know how to create successful meetings on a consistent basis? And then we'll wrap up the day with some organizing and integrating our learning as we prepare to come back together tomorrow. A couple of housekeeping notes. As you can see, Carrie is videotaping as part of our learning journey. Carrie will be videotaping us, and she will also be spending some time at her computer gathering data. So no worries about that, but we do want to make sure that everyone understands that. We shared this space before. There are snacks here at the back table. Thank you for providing those. And we know the restrooms are, thank you. And we know that the restrooms are on the other side of this wall here. What other housekeeping do we have?
You'll notice that we have name tags on this table, so even if you have your city or name tag, we do ask that you create a paper name tag. It just allows us as presenters to be able to see your name, so we can refer to you by name, continue learning everybody's name. So if you haven't yet, take a moment and go ahead and write your name on a paper name tag and So as you're going and doing that, you're finding a partner, and you're saying, hey, do you have somebody for your 12 o'clock appointment? If they say no, let's be partners. You write their name down, they will record your name, and that way when the 12 o'clock comes up, you will know who you're going to talk with. It's similar to the fractal partners that we did in days 1 and 2 of our time together. And you're going to repeat that until you have an appointment for each of yourself without a partner for one of those appointment times, just come to the front and Liz and I will support you in getting a partner for that time slot. What questions might you have about partners? All right, go ahead and make those appointments. All right, so we would love to hear some from the room. So just go ahead and shout out, what are some of those unproductive behaviors that you and your group came up with? Multitasking. Multitasking. Doing more than one thing while you were in the meeting. What else? Sidebar conversation. Side conversation.
Not having an agenda.
Not having an agenda. Unrealistic timelines. Unrealistic timelines. Yeah, have constraints. Maybe not getting through everything you could. What else?
Relevancy, or the right people.
That might also make some decision making, which we'll talk about later today. Going on topic.
Society too rigid, not acknowledging that other things come up.
Yeah. So this balance of flexibility and effectiveness.
Not being present, we talked about, not paying attention, not listening.
Yeah. Switch back to that multitasking.
I think just people not listening, you have to reiterate or answer the same questions over and over. Like, what time is it here? It's like, I told you 6 hours.
The sense that group members are not necessarily actively.
Not really masking frustrations as questions, maybe like targeted questions. Not really.
Yeah, we're gonna get into posing questions later today, and that notion of how to pose questions in a way that genuinely actually invites others to engage.
Introducing an idea has actually already been introduced by another member, but we don't acknowledge that. Do we kind of put it forth like your own or just keep, erase it the other person's vision?
Yeah. But if you're paying attention to what's already present in the room, it's gonna affect the group member. Not on tangents. Common theme of like agenda, being on topic, sidebar. Preparedness. Can you say more about that? Making sure you have everything you need to that space. Great. So as hard as it is, we're gonna ask that you take all of those things that you know about unproductive behaviors in meetings and set them aside. Because the next bit of time we're gonna spend together is thinking about what might be some of the productive behaviors that we all know are present in our meeting spaces.
So the good news is this, although we've all sat through these really unproductive meetings, a lot of that was resonating, going, oh yeah, I remember what meeting you're talking about, yes. There are principles that can help us understand how to make meetings more effective, right? It's not some mystery solution, it doesn't require magic, it requires an understanding of what you're there to do, the principles of how meetings work, and a thought about how to really increase the effectiveness of those meetings to maximize the group members that are together there. So that's what we're gonna spend the next part of our morning talking about. We're gonna start again by coming back to the expertise of this group, because just like you all have been in really unproductive meetings, you also know a lot about how to make meetings really productive. So we're gonna get back to the expertise in this group with an activity called sort cards. So this is an activity that's gonna proceed in stages. I'm gonna give you the first set of directions, and then we'll come back together and we'll move forward, okay? So for this activity, individually, we're gonna start by generating some concrete examples of productive strategies and tools that you've either seen or used in meetings. You're gonna record your ideas one per
considered more flexible than rules are. So rather than a rule that states here's how you have to do it, a principle addresses more of the underlying behaviors of why something might be happening the way it is. So we talk about the principles of organizing principles of meetings. In the next bit, I'm gonna put up the first principle. I'm gonna ask everyone in the room to silently read that principle. And then I'm gonna ask you to respond to the prompt, because we know this, we might. So you'll turn to a neighbor and respond to the prompt, because we know this, we might. So here's the first organizing principle. And when you're ready, you'll turn to a neighbor and say, because we know this, we might. So with this organizing principle, while we know being a facilitator and paying attention to those plates we talked about earlier matters, the 7 norms of collaboration that we've talked about, and the group member capabilities together of everybody who's in the room are what's ultimately going to drive a group's effectiveness more than a really skilled facilitator will do that. Now the second organizing principle. And because we know this, we might.
Okay, thank you for your tours, and docents, thank you for sharing your information. We're gonna bring it back now. So there was at least one person from your group that did not get an opportunity to tour the room, so you're gonna come back to your table and share.
Give everyone about 10 seconds to make their way back to their tables.
So share with your docent and the other folks at your table, what are some ideas that resonated with you that you want to bring back to your group? What similarities did you see, or new and unique ideas did you learn while you were out touring? Take a few moments and talk at your tables.
Alright, and as promised, we are now going to start talking about meetings. So, as was referenced at the beginning of the day, City Year does have a pretty meeting-heavy culture. And while it's not always a positive experience, there are a lot of things that we learn through those meetings about what to do and what not to do. And we're going to take a moment to create some shared meeting together based on our lots of experiences that we've had in meetings over time. So, in your table groups, we're going to ask that you brainstorm what might be some of the unproductive behaviors you've experienced in meetings. So knowing that you've probably experienced a few of them, we're going to give you some time to brainstorm and actually write them down. So you're going to do some table groups, you're going to have one person be the recorder, and write down, you can do it on a sticky note, there's some blank pages in the back of your learning guide, and you're going to brainstorm for 1 minute. What might be some of the unproductive meeting behaviors that you have experienced? Go ahead and do that now. So this organizing principle is naming that this work starts with relationships, but then ultimately with individuals. So we're all bringing in past interactions, conversations, patterns of behavior from the past into every present conversation we're having. And so it's our work as individuals to start with ourselves and think about how might we be showing up in this moment in a way that might not actually be about this present moment, but about something that might have happened in the past. And at the same time, we really have to pay attention with this one to power dynamics. So we all know that when we're in a room together having a meeting, our individual identities create different power dynamics that show up in different ways in a room. And that's not something that we can ignore as we're thinking about how we come together, how we build relationships, how we operate together as a group. And that's why those group member capabilities around knowing one's intentions and choosing congruent behaviors, especially if you're somebody who might have power, either positionally or because of your identity in a space, but also everyone who's present in a room, what are your intentions? And then really consciously making choices about the way you're showing up
that match those intentions. It's something that we're reminded to do through this second organizing principle.
Before we go on to the third organizing principle, I'm going to ask you to pause for a moment and look at these questions that are on page 64 in your learning guide. You're going to have a couple of minutes to talk with a partner, keeping in mind your team, a team that you're working with, and select one or two of these prompts and just share your thoughts with your partner about your team according to that prompt. Okay? So take a couple of minutes, choose a prompt, and talk with someone at your table, a partner, about your thoughts on your team according to that prompt. What questions might there be about this next activity? Okay.
All right, and for our third organizing principle, we're going to spend a bit of time unpacking it, including into the afternoon, but we'll offer it now. So in high-performing groups, the 5 energy sources are the self-organizing values for every group and every meeting. So the 5 energy sources of group efficacy, group flexibility, group craftsmanship, group consciousness, and group interdependence are all things that matter when you're thinking about organizing principles of your group and of your meeting. And there are ways in which we can attend to those energy sources as a facilitator in different ways. We have to remember that in complex adaptive systems, both things and energy matter, right? Back to our principles of complex systems in days 1 and 2. And so just paying attention to the thing will not be as effective as paying attention also to how the energy is flowing. And as facilitators, we can make choices that attend to and help to move that flow of energy in a way that the group might need and help to develop that group a little bit better. So again, we're going to spend some time unpacking these energy sources over the course of the rest of the day as well. And you're going to get an opportunity now to read a little bit more about them.
So on page 65, you're going to do a read and share with a partner. So you'll go through with your partner and read each energy source. After you read each energy source, you'll look up, share a paraphrase, a connection, or perhaps an example that comes to mind based on that energy source. Then you'll go back and read the next one, and you'll continue until you've read through all of them. Okay? What questions might there be about the pair reading? Great.
And as you're finishing your conversation, make your way back to your seat at the table. All right, at this point, we're making our way back to our table groups. Go ahead and thank your partners. And we're going to continue our work around meetings by talking about the 3 most important things about meetings. So, when you're facilitating a meeting or you're asked to facilitate a meeting, it can feel really overwhelming. Both because of the whirlwind of all the things that we know we're paying attention to in our day-to-day work, but also as a facilitator, all of the things that you have to pay attention to within a meeting space. Wellman and Lipton offer this metaphor of a street entertainer spinning plates. So have you all ever seen, either in real life or on a video, a street performer who might be spinning different plates on a stick and you have to spin each one of them to keep them going? As a facilitator, you're having to do the same thing. You're having to notice when one of the plates starts to wobble and then direct more of your energy to that plate to keep it moving. And that's a lot to pay attention to as a facilitator in different spaces. But don't worry, we're here to tell you the 3 most important things about meetings. And they are outcomes, outcomes, and outcomes. So, while that might sound really simple, outcomes are really the most important things about a meeting. Why are we here? Why are we in a meeting versus a different way of communicating or working together? And that really gets down to the outcome of a meeting. And while this sounds simple, I really had to rethink the ways in which I think about outcomes when I learned this. So oftentimes, we would say the outcome of a space is, let's say for example, the outcome is that we are going to brainstorm a venue for MLK Day. That's the outcome of our meeting. And what Adaptive Schools teaches us is that that outcome should really be something that is tangible. It should be a thing. So rather than this idea of brainstorming a list of venues for MLK Day, it should sound more like we are going to walk away from this meeting with 3 to 5 options within our budget of venues for MLK Day that the group has surfaced. And we're gonna assign somebody to take each one of those and follow up about cost, whether they're available, and have an action plan leaving that meeting. Right, so that sounds much different than we're brainstorming potential venues for MLK Day to say we have this very tangible thing that we are leaving this meeting space with. So when we think about outcomes for meetings, think about how are you naming something tangible that that group is leaving that meeting space with. And that simple kind of pivot to thinking about it as a tangible thing can really support you as a facilitator in why are we getting together? What is this meeting for? What is the outcome that we're hoping for? So that's one thing to keep in mind as we think about meetings. So there are 3 purposes to meetings, and they are task, so the what did we come here to do? What is the outcome? The process is the how, so how are we gonna go about doing that thing? And the final one is group development, so the who we are and who we hope to be. And as a facilitator, we need to pay attention to each of these spinning plates.
So you're often also not just a facilitator in a meeting, but you're a group member, right? And we talked on days 1 and 2, we introduced this idea of becoming a more skillful group member. And I want to call your attention to our group member capabilities banner here in the back. And number 4 says to know and support the group's purposes, topics, processes, and development. So knowing that, holding on to that, and thinking about task, process, and group development, I want to give you a moment to kind of talk with a partner about what are some upcoming meetings that you might have, where you're either a facilitator or a skillful group member, and think about what parts of that, of the meeting purpose, the what, the how, or the who, might need more attention. So what are you going to be giving in this upcoming meeting that you're going to think about? What might need more of your attention? Do you need to focus more on being clear and thoughtful about what you're going to get done? Do you need to think more and be clear and thoughtful about how your group is going to move through the activities? Are you going to be spending more of your time thinking about caring for the group's development during that time? So take a moment, queue up a meeting that you're thinking about going into, and talk with a partner about which of these plates might need more of your attention in this upcoming meeting. Thank you for that. And so we know that all of the, as Sophia said, balancing all of these plates can be difficult. And what tends to happen, what we see is in novice groups and groups that are earlier on in their development, they start right at the top, and their meetings are very focused on what is getting done during that time. And as groups develop, or as we are trying to help our groups develop, we can encourage our group to be thinking about all 3 of these things for every single meeting. Because what ends up happening is if I only focus on what is getting done and I don't care for how we're going to do that, and I don't care for the how of the group, who the group needs to be as we are doing this work, those are going to come up in conflict anyway, and we're not going to get as far as we wanted to get down on that task that we were trying to do. So it's really about trying to figure out how do you include thinking around the task, the process, and the group itself in every meeting that you might be a part of. How might we do that?
And one of the best ways to do that is to plan for it. So we offer an opening pattern for meetings that you can use that attends to all 3 of those spinning plates. And you've probably seen us do this in each of our 3 so far Adaptive Schools days. And although it looks like many items, it can be done quickly as well. So starting with a welcome or an audience connect attends to that group development piece. So just by welcoming people into the room, it also sets the space that we are now gathered together to start the meeting. Oftentimes, I'm sure you all know, we're talking before the meeting, we're connecting, and then as the opening and audience connect, we get a chance to say, and now we're starting our meeting, and get a chance for the facilitator to make a connection to the group members who are present that day. That attends to that group development plate. The inclusion activity does the same. So you've seen each of our days we've started with a different inclusion activity. And while in this setting, we spend a good amount of time in that inclusion activity, we probably spend 20 to 30 minutes at least at the beginning of the day. On day 1, we spent a couple hours doing some inclusion. Inclusion activities don't necessarily have to take that long. It can be a simple matter of asking a question and allowing folks to talk with one another for a couple minutes. It doesn't have to be something that is a big activity like we've been doing in this space, but always remembering that that is important to include as part of an opening pattern for meetings. That attends to that group development as well. The introduction and overview. So for some folks, they go along with kind of what the day is, and for some folks, you want to see where the day is heading. You want to be able to see where we are now, where we're going to be in a little bit. And that attends to that task piece, right? The what. So what are we going to be doing today together? Giving folks some context around what that is. The outcomes. So every day you'll see that we list the outcomes for the day. And again, being that that is a very important part of the meeting, that allows folks to know, here's what we're leaving the space with today. And that allows group members to know where their attention should be put during the time. I know being off task, a few things came up in that unproductive meeting behaviors brainstorm. Naming the outcomes explicitly for the group really helps to attend to what we're doing in that task we're doing together today. The what, why, and how. So we've offered that structure of what, why, how for each of the strategies that we've done. And that really attends to the process. So the how of how we're going to do our work today. In Seattle, after we started doing Adaptive Schools, one of the things we moved to was really paying attention to giving the what, why, and how for every single space that we were in. Even when we would craft an email about something to people, we would do it in a what, why, and how format. And what that really does is oftentimes the process is not visible to group participants. Oftentimes the facilitator kind of holds on to what the process is, and that really can affect group development or affect people knowing what their role is in the meeting space. So by making really plain and visible the how we're going to go about doing our work together, and especially at City Year, I think too, the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this way? And letting folks in on why that's happening can be a really simple way of structuring a space with the what, why, and how that attends to the process piece. And then the visible charted agenda. So you'll see the agenda is not only for today, but for our past meetings. That way, for folks who like to see both where we are and where we're going, it gives you a roadmap of what our time together is going to look like. So by using this opening pattern for meetings, it's a simple way as you're entering any meeting space, take this with you and think about how am I attending to each one of these things as I'm entering this meeting space, and allows that whirlwind that you have as a facilitator both outside and inside a space to maybe feel a little bit more structured by attending to this opening pattern that you might have for meetings coming up. So think again about that meeting that might be coming up for you. Now that you have this opening pattern structure, which one of these might you want to make sure you're including in your next meeting? Which one of these might you want to pay attention to in your upcoming meeting? Go ahead and turn to a partner and talk briefly about that. Great. So as facilitators, we really get to be orchestrators of this space. And for me, when I learned this, it also made me think about how I plan for meetings, right? So oftentimes it would be, I know what we got to do in this meeting, I know it before the meeting, so I'm going to go in there and we're going to do the thing. And I didn't spend a lot of time planning or actually dedicating time in my workday or my calendar to planning for meetings. And knowing that you are this orchestrator of these different plates that you're constantly having to be spinning as a facilitator, also thinking about what time might you have to actually be planning and dedicating work time to planning meetings as well to make sure you're attending to those 3 different processes that are in adaptive school. Great. So now we're gonna head into break and we're gonna return in 15 minutes, which is gonna be at 8:19. 10:19. I'm on West Coast time still. 10:19. And during the break, this is the link to register for this training. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and follow this link to register. And when you do that, we are going to print out certificates for tomorrow that will have your name on it. And that will be signed by us as certification that you went through the 4-day adaptive school seminar. So make sure that you're also registering for this training during the break as well. Great, so we'll see you back here at 10:19.